Hey artistic athletes, are you struggling to get your legs higher and not feeling the right muscles working when you're trying to work on it? Then this episode is for you. This is going to be part one of a 4-part series, and if you're not already watching this through our email list, be sure to check the links below, sign up, and get the full 4-part series with more details. What we're going to do in part one is we're going to discuss the muscles around the hip and be sure you know what they do and what you should be working on. At the end, I'll go through at least 2 of our favorite exercises to start getting those muscles working, the correct muscles in the correct way. What we're going to start with first is discussing the anatomy around the hip, so the muscles. I'm going to separate the muscles into 3 groups. Some of you anatomy scientists and people who study healthcare will have a much deeper understanding of this, but I'm going to start with a very simple overview. So we have the front of the hip. Those are going to be what's called the flexors. We have the inner thigh, or the adductors, and then we have the back of the hip, which would mainly be the glutes and the extenders. So in dance, we don't always use the same anatomy terms we use in the science world. So lifting your leg up to the front is called hip flexion. The hip flexors are the muscles that do hip flexion. I don't know when this happened, but sometime over the last 30 years, the hip flexors have got a really bad rep in the dance world. So I want you to take a minute to take away those bad notions. The hip flexor is the #1 most important muscle, our muscle group, to lift your leg up to the front and to the side. We're not going to be talking about lifting the leg to the back during this episode, but we can cover that another day. So with that said, the front of your hip is what needs to be working to lift your leg to the front. Now I'm going to go through, we have 3 hip flexor muscles. 2 of them are very hard to feel or sense. We have one called the psoas major, that's the #1 we're working on, but don't worry, I'm not going to test you on the name. That actually attaches to the front, under your stomach, the front side of your low back. What I want you to be aware of only is that if I have poor control, if you're one of the dancers who tends to fall into this position, a lot of arch when you're not trying to, it makes it very hard to engage the psoas major. It attaches from the front of the lower spine right into the front of the hip. It is what we want to be using the most of when lifting the leg to the front or side. Doesn't mean we don't need to use other muscles. It just means that's the #1 primary muscle. We're not going to talk about holding your back straight and how to help engage your core as much in this episode. If that's something you still are struggling with or working through, I please want you to leave a comment, ask for some things to help with that, and I will send that over your way. The next one is very closely related. It is on, if you can feel your hip bone, it's kind of that round bone off the side. I want you to find that. It's on the inside and attaches right next to the psoas major down in the front of the hip. That is your iliacus. It's another very important muscle. The one that's easy to feel is your TFL, what we call it for short, on that big hip pelvis bone. It's right on the outside. Still important, but it tends to do a lot of the work on its own. So we want to make sure we are strengthening, keeping that engaged, but also working not the more important, the also important, and the major movers for hip flexion, front and side, in our kicks or extensions. The one other muscle we'll talk about here in the front is the quadriceps. Quad meaning 4. Only one of the 4 muscles here actually attaches up and contributes to hip flexion. So our dancers usually talk about either gripping in the hip flexor or gripping in the quadricep. What I want to say is that the quadricep does help with lifting the hip. So it is okay to feel that muscle, and we're going to talk about in a future episode. Be sure you're either subscribed here or in our email list to get that, about what's going on with gripping. So I'm not going to dig into that now, but I do want you to know the quad does help with hip flexion, so it's okay to feel these muscles, but we really want to make sure it's not giving us the most trouble and that we're engaging those other muscles. Let's just talk about some of the surrounding muscles as well. We'll go to the inner thigh group. are the adductors. The inner thigh is not a muscle we are using to really get the height to the front or side. Now, if you're dealing with other things, irritations, the other muscles besides the hip flexors are active. Their main role is helping stability, helping so the hip doesn't come out of the socket, doesn't pinch, move too much in uncomfortable positions. So I'm not saying not to use muscles. I never say that to dancers. Dance is hard, dance is complicated. You need every single muscle working. We want them all to be strong. You never want to turn off or stop using a muscle. What we want to do instead is make sure the most important muscles are strong and able to help carry the load, and then the other muscles are there for support. So we're never stopping using muscles, we're increasing other muscle use. So we're improving how we use some. That's how we're going to think of the inner thigh group. It helps mainly the inner thigh muscle pulls your leg when it's out to the side, into the center, or even over here. So it is helping keeping the leg in towards midline, not helping bring the leg out to the side in terms of height. It's still active for a stability role. When we move to the back, we're going to think of the glute, the big butt muscle. There are multiple of those, and there are many smaller muscles involved as well inside the back of the hip. The main thing the glute does is pull the leg this way, also is a major turnout. But it has nothing to do with lifting your leg up here or out here. It will help when it's engaged get that turnout if you're looking for turnout in these positions, but you won't get the height just by training the glute, and you definitely should not be feeling your glute working when you're lifting to these positions, okay? It is the opposite, it's pulling you back. So, we've done our quick anatomy review. Hopefully you have an idea of what some of these muscles do, and we know what we're trying to get, if we're trying to get higher, is here in the front. Before I give you some exercises to try, I want to help you feel these muscles a little bit. You're going to have a hard time feeling the deeper psoas major and iliacus, the two major players in our hip extension to the front and kicks to the front and side. But we're going to help you hopefully feel some of the other ones. So when you're doing these exercises, you'll have a better idea of what's working. So what we're going to do, sit in a chair, and we're just going to practice putting our whole hand across the front of the hip, right where that crease is. Then, I'm going to lift one leg up. You should be able to feel some things poke up, kind of ropey. Those are our tendons. They're how our muscle attaches to the bone. Now, if you turn your foot out while you're lifting and you kind of go to this hip bone right on the outside, you should feel that big kind of mass right there. That's your TFL. So you can feel that working, especially when you turn the foot out to the side in this position, and you'll feel that working. So that's actually internal rotation of the hip, but you're seeing your foot go out to the side. That's how we know my TFL. I can feel that when I'm doing exercise. I want you to feel the quad too. So when I come back to the center, straighten your leg and kind of feel around. You'll feel that ropey, and you can relax it down, straighten it out, even put your other leg and push against it, and you'll really feel one of those ropey tendons push up. And now you're like, okay, I have an idea where my quadricep is. So when I'm doing my exercises, if those two things are what I feel the most, we know we might have to adjust position. And as you put your hand in front and do slow rotations, you'll probably notice different muscles pop up. Like I said, you're not going to feel the deep hip flexors as easily with this. If you're having a lot of trouble, there are professionals who can get a little deeper and potentially help you get that engagement. For our exercises, all I want you to feel is that I'm not getting all my work from one of those spots. For the first exercise, you're going to take a loop band, put it around both feet, lay down on the ground, flatten that lower back. Now I would like your head to be resting down. I'm going to lean it up because it's easier to talk to the camera and get my voice going the right way. Flatten the low back, keep that core engaged, hold one foot still, pull this one up, pause, kind of sense what you're feeling, let it go down slow. We're going to repeat that, adding knee adjustments to help you feel what we're looking for you to feel. Ease it back down. Depending on your band tightness, you may be able to get higher, you may not be able to. That's okay, as long as we're feeling what we want you to be feeling in the front of that hip. All right, here's the second exercise for you to work on. You're gonna take a medium to light band, tie it to something sturdy, and then you're gonna put it around the front of one of your feet. You're gonna step out until that band starts feeling a little tight. Hold on to something sturdy. We're gonna lean forward, look at the back position. Remember we talked about that. We can't have this arch. We need to have our stomach engaged to get the muscle we want. From here, we're gonna hold my whole body still. Only this leg is gonna work, and I'm gonna bring that knee up. Slowly come back down, no change in my back position. And as we do that over time, I'm hoping you start to feel a little sore, kind of a little deeper, not a pain or pinching, but like the muscles getting a little sore. I feel it working, it's getting harder. You can always step further away to make it harder, hold it a little bit longer, or get closer to make it easier. And remember, you can try adding little rotations with the knee to help you feel what you want to feel. All right, well that is part one. Hopefully you have a better idea of what muscles are engaged and what muscles you are supposed to be using when you're kicking, lifting your leg to the front and side. Over the next few episodes, over the next couple weeks, we're going to be going through what you're feeling when you're getting that gripping and pinching, finding out what specific aspect is holding you back from getting the height you want, and then we're going to go through even more exercises and how to progress that over time. If you're not already following our email list, we'll send out all the detail and these videos. Just click the link below and sign up. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below.